Welcome back to Mirror's Signal podcast. Today we are joined by the Empathetic Instructor Trainer, Becky Seaton. In today's episode, Becky shares what she's been up to since her last episode with us at the start of the year and how she can help either ADIs or PDIs preparing for the Part 3 or the standards check. We also talk about a few other topics related to the job, from what skills you need as a driving instructor to the difference between skills and subjects when we are delivering lessons. If you enjoy this episode, please make sure that you hit the like button. You can also leave your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, make sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any episodes as they go live. If you have any questions for me or you'd like any more information, you can head to the Facebook page, and that's available at Mirror's Signal Podcast. There's also a Facebook group if you'd like to ask any questions and get the opinions of maybe some other ADIs or some of the trainers that we've got in the industry that are in the group. And that's also available at Mirror's Signal Podcast. For now, we will get on with the episode. I hope you all enjoy. Becky, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Josh. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. It's great to have you back. You was on the podcast December last year, I think it was.
It was. It feels like a long time since being on Mirror Signal podcast. Not a long time since we've chatted, but it's definitely good to be back.
Good. So what have you been up to since we last spoke?
A lot, quite a lot. Yeah. So personal life is going lovely. Nothing's wrong there. The kids are growing up. All that's well. Had that awful 100-day cough in February that everybody had. So yeah, it's all good. The sun's starting to come out. Life's good. Professional wise, I've been a busy bee behind my computer. Yeah, working on something that hopefully we're going to talk about and see if we can help some people.
Let's talk about it then. So what have you been up to? What have you been working on?
So when I was last here and we were talking about my qualifying journey, the reason why I wanted to get that out was to see what kind of reaction I got back from that episode. I know that I'm not the only person to have such an awful journey qualifying. The 3 qualifying tests aren't easy. We all know that the pass rates are fairly low. But my journey was a difficult one, which if people want to go back and, excuse me, listen to it fully, they'll hear all the all the gory details for it. The reaction that I got from our podcast, I had a lot of people messaging saying that they had exactly the same kind of journey. I had people saying that they were going through the journey at the time of hearing us. I've had people coming up to me at some workshops and courses that I've attended, some other trainers' courses, coming up to me saying, I had you and Josh on my telly last night and I'm going through the same thing. And yeah, I kind of got the validation that I was looking for to show me that what it was that I wanted to do was the right thing that I wanted to do. And what it is that I wanted to do was to start I'm not going to call it a company, I'm not going to call it a business, start a community, a place, a person, me, where PDIs that are having that really rubbish journey and ADIs that are maybe got their standards check coming up, they've got somewhere to go. They don't have to suffer in silence, I guess, which is such an awful saying. But sometimes when you are struggling to pass your part 1, you've failed 2 attempts at part 2 and you're on your last chance. You've got a trainee license and you've picked up loads of bad habits and you've got a part 3 coming up and you're panicking. Sometimes the training school you've gone with or your local franchise school you've gone with, sometimes you're not getting quite what you need. and it's hard because you don't know that you're not getting what you need. I am hoping to be somebody that can help you through that journey. If you're struggling with the competencies, let's talk about it. Let's de-junk all of the DVSA jargon. Let's make it simple and easy to understand. If you are panicking about the test, if you're feeling nervous or worried, I can help with that too, because I've been there and done it myself. If you're struggling with managing your diary day to day, we can talk about that. I've been teaching now for 5 years, so I can help you with that too. If you are struggling with going self-employed, that's a massive minefield in itself. Knowing how to start that ball rolling. What about things like being on a pink license? Have you got the right form? Does your trainer know which forms they need to fill in? There's just so much to this journey that I think sometimes isn't laid out in plain English. Sometimes it's hidden by words and nonsense. And I just want to get rid of all that nonsense and just help people not have a rubbish journey.
You've been working on a lot the last few months, I take it.
Well, you definitely know that I've been working on a lot the last few months.
Yes, I do. So what are some of the ways that you're looking to help people with those kind of challenges? Because there is a lot. It is quite a big journey. It's difficult. So what are some of the things that you're going to be doing to help people?
So when I was qualifying, the types of issues that I had were bad training. At the time, I didn't know it was bad training, but now, upon reflection, going on courses, speaking to trainers, I now know that it was bad training. What I'd really love to be able to do is to offer people the opportunity to hear how I can make things a bit simpler for them, help them understand what is expected of them on this part 3 test, on your standard check, on the part 2 test, on the part 1 test, and not have it be so confusing. I would like to help people feel more confident at contacting their local instructors around them, people who might be able to offer a helping hand in letting PDI sit in the back of their car and watch lessons. I remember being a PDI and thinking, I can't message that instructor. He won't let me sit in the back of his car. And actually, as a PDI, how useful is that to be able to sit and watch an instructor deliver a lesson to a normal pupil? It's not role play, even though we know that there's good in role play. Watching a real life thing, not on a YouTube channel, is massive. And that's something that I offer my local PDIs now. I have quite a few that just jump in, sit in the back. My pupils now start to know them by name, which is quite nice. And they'll be like, oh, is so-and-so joining us today? And why not, if it helps them? Giving the PDI or asking the PDI what it is that they want to learn from that lesson. So, you know, the other day I had one guy who said, I want to really see how you adapt the lesson today. So I gave him like a piece of paper and I said, right, so I want you to write down the faults that the pupil makes. I want you to write down to see how we discuss it and go through it. So I'm helping them get out of watching a lesson what they need. Regarding helping people in general, I'm going to waffle a lot on Facebook or on Zoom, wherever anybody wants to listen to me, about all of this. You know, there's going to be a bit of structure to it. There's some great Zooms coming up with some experts. We've got a few people lined up who are going to come on a Zoom session with me, and we're going to talk about some specific things to help with the journey. I've got some great ideas of what I want to do, because I remember being a PDI and thinking, where's this information? How can I get this information? And why am I getting, if I am getting this information, why am I getting 5 different versions of it? Where is the facts and the figures from the DVSA or from my local trainer? I just want to make it simple for people. And I'm hoping, because I've been there, been there, done it, got the t-shirt, people can just understand that I do empathize with them. It's not easy, but we can make it easier.
Certainly, it can be made easier. There's something I want to ask you based on what you said. I think it was at the beginning about you had some bad training and then you didn't realize it was bad training until you got more training. And I guess that was where it all made sense to you. So a question I've got is, on reflection, what were some of the things? Was there anything that you could kind of guide people on that are maybe struggling but don't quite know why? How do you know good training from bad training?
In the moment, you don't really, I guess, do you? I remember a trainer, my first Part 3 trainer, telling me to go away and write out some lesson plans, and we're going to come back to the session and you're going to deliver a lesson to me on moving off and stopping, and you're going to deliver a lesson to me on left turns and right turns. And you know what was expected of me was to go and write this sort of 10-minute monologue of me just blurting out all this information about DSSM and the cockpit drill, and this is how you turn your wipers on, and this is how you do all of this stuff. And actually, that is so not what's needed. It doesn't have to be like that. We don't need to spend the first hour sat with our pupils talking about every instrument in the car. But at the time, I was told that that's what I had to do, that what was expected of me when presenting my my pupil for my Part 3 test, whatever subject it was I was doing, and I was told a subject as well, we can come back to subjects and skills in a bit, I was told that I had to give a 8 to 10 minute presentation on this subject. So let's talk about everything to do with this subject, and then off we go. And that's not what they're looking for at all. They're looking for you helping your pupil teach themselves a little bit. It's, we know the answers, of course we do. We're advanced drivers, but the pupils have a lot of knowledge as well. They don't need to spend an hour with me saying, do you know where your wipers are? Do you know what the handbrake does? Do you know what the gear stick does? We don't need to do all of that. But what we can do is say, do you know which pedal makes the car go? Do you want to press it? Do you want to see what happens when you press that pedal? And let them experience what happens and then discuss what they've experienced. Oh, look, the car's stalled. Why do you think that happened? How can we make it not stall again? What can you hear when you press that gas pedal? Do you think that sounds good? How can we make the car sound better? Questions like that to get them to experience it. I think if I had somebody sat talking at me for an hour, I'd just fall asleep. I wouldn't pay attention.
So we will discuss, because you brought up skills and subjects, I think it's a good topic to discuss. But what would you look for? Let's go back to the good training versus bad training with hindsight and your experience now and where you're at. For people looking for training now, or they're maybe on a PDI license or they've got a Part 3 coming up, what would you look for in a trainer? What would be some things you'd be looking for?
I'll start with what I wouldn't look for again. So okay. I wouldn't go for the person who's a friend of a friend who trained me 8 years ago on preset tests and they know best, so go with them. I wouldn't just take one person's recommendation and just say, oh, well, they helped them, so they're going to help me. Not every trainer is for every PDI. I'm not going to be for everyone. You're not going to be for everyone. That's just life. We're all not for everyone. So I think it's good if you get recommended, or it's good if somebody gets recommended to you, but do your own homework, meet up with them or have a phone call with them, see if you get on with them, see if you can learn from them. I remember being at school and I had 2 psychology teachers for my A-level. And one was a great teacher who, she'd take her shoes off and she'd sit on the desk cross-legged, and she would help us experiment with things, and we'd talk about all the psychology case studies. And then we had another teacher who did like the other half of the week, and she we had to sit and just stare at the blackboard while she wrote stuff out. It weren't whiteboard still. while she wrote stuff out, and she talked at us and we just had to sit and listen and we couldn't engage. And I remember her saying to me once, Becky, you're not paying attention. And I said, well, that's because I don't learn from you. And everyone in the class went, oh, and she went, excuse me. And I went, I'm really sorry, but I don't learn from you. I learned better from Mrs. King. And I got detention for that, because how dare I say that to a teacher? But, you're not going to be for everyone. You are. The way that I will speak to people about all of this, somebody might just think I am waffling, and that's fine. I think you just got to do your own homework. If somebody gets recommended to you, just speak to them yourself. I met a couple of trainers in the coffee shops and had chats and spoke to people on Facebook, and that helped. That helped narrow down who I didn't want and who maybe I did want.
So it's the conversation, the in-person, and seeing if you want to work with them.
Absolutely, yeah. I think as well, it depends on what you're looking for. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't go for the bee's knees. Whatever the bee's knees is, I wouldn't. I would go for just whoever I can relate to. Which sounds like a massive shameless plug. But that's who I am. I would go for somebody that I can think, oh, hang on, they're not ramming it down my face that they're the best thing going. They're actually telling me that they understand where I'm coming from. They've experienced it before, so they're going to help me experience it. I remember a manager saying to me, I was 16, I was a waitress. He was a brilliant manager. We had to, I think it'd been New Year's Eve or something. So New Year's morning, everyone's left. We're cleaning up the restaurant. And he's there on his hands and knees helping hoover. And I remember saying to him, I'll do that. You don't need to do that. And he went, no, it's fine. We've all got to chip in. And he said, I'm a manager. I'm never going to ask you guys to do something that I wouldn't. And I related to him. He was a better manager to me than a manager who would tell me to do it and stand and watch because he thinks he's better than me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. There's something in it when you can relate to that person. And it does seem there's still some training being delivered around kind of PSTs, and it does seem to have changed. Did you notice a difference in your training? It's something that I've discussed a few times in the past on the episodes, and it's when we're learning to become driving instructors, it feels very much we're told what we should do,
Yeah.
and we're instructed on what we should do, and then we're expected to deliver coaching, but we've never experienced it because the training we're receiving isn't in that kind of coaching setup. It's in here's the knowledge, I'm going to give it to you. Did you feel there was a difference there through your journey when you was finding the different trainers, and did that help?
Yeah, absolutely. There were some that would tell me that this is how you do it. So go off and write up a lesson plan and come back and do it. And then I had some that did say, try asking these different types of questions, try suggesting this with your pupil. So I had some that I was able to take some knowledge from and use. But I think it's the same with anything. You learn by experience. When babies are learning to walk, they don't just suddenly get up and walk. We don't tell them from being born to 1 year old, this is how you do it. I'm just letting you know, this is how you do it. At some point, they just experienced it and they learn by experience. They fall down and they go, oh, well, I don't want to fall down again. So next time I'm going to hold on to the sofa. Or, it doesn't matter what it is that you're learning, whether you're learning to walk, whether you're learning to ride a bike, whether you're learning an IT job, whether you're learning to be a driving instructor, whatever you're learning, you've got to learn by experience, in my opinion. I don't think people like just being told what to do.
I don't think there's much evidence that it works either, just being told what to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll go on to skills and subjects then. You brought it up a few minutes ago. What are your thoughts on that?
As a PDI, looking at your ADI 21T form that you have to go through with your trainer to get a trainee license so that you can teach for reward while you're training. Most of the form is subjects. So meeting traffic, pedestrian crossings, junctions, all that kind of stuff. So you look at it, and as a PDI, you think, oh, okay, so that's what I need to teach. I'm going to be taught this because that's what I now need to go and teach, kind of thing. So straight from the off, you're hit with subjects. You think that you have to, and then we get really great lesson planners. The diagrams, planners that you can get, and each page is moving off and stopping, emerging left, emerging right, approaching left, approaching right, left turns at crossroads, right turns at cross, and it goes on and on and on. And it is just subject, subject, subject. So you get this book and you're like, okay, so today, people, we're going to look at left emerging. Today, people, we're going to look at right emerging. And actually, well, there's a lot that we're doing when we turn left. It's not just take the car and put it left. There's a lot to it. Think how many skills we use to make a car go from one direction to another, sort of thing. And that is really, really massively missing in PDI's training, I think, which may be down to the head of this all. The ADI 21T form doesn't really help. It's a subject-based form where actually we want to be skill-based and coaching and client-centered. But that's where hopefully good trainers can fill that gap for PDIs and say, okay, so we're going to do left turns. How do you think we're going to do left turns? What skills do we need to turn left? How are we going to teach our pupils to turn left? Because we don't just get in the car and go, okay, turn left. There's a lot to it. We go through our routines that we learned in part 2. So our MSPSL, our look, assess, decide, act. And they're our skill sets, aren't they? Our observations, our car control, our planning, our anticipation, our judgment. We need to work through those. And actually, you'll find that if you can get your pupil to move off and stop at the side of the road, they can also move off and stop at a red light. They can also move off and stop at the end of the road. They can also move off and stop when they get home and pull on the driveway. You know, as soon as you start to introduce the skill side of it, everything else does kind of flow. It does make it a lot easier to transfer that knowledge.
I found that, and I've spoken about it quite a few times on the episode actually, is the skills. Because if you teach the skills, like you said, they're applicable everywhere. Because
Absolutely.
driving, if we break it down, is quite simple. Actually doing it and learning to do it can be a challenge.
Yeah.
But like you said, once you've figured out how to make the car go, how to make it stop, and you know where your dangers are, you can navigate most areas.
A great example is helping your pupil realize that they've already got a load of those skills before they've even pressed a pedal. So I had a pupil recently say to me that she can't multitask. She said, I'm really bad at multitasking. All these jobs I've got to do at a junction. Oh my God, Becky, that I can't multitask. And I said, well, you know, when you messaged me the other day, what were you doing? She said, oh, I was just on the way to college. I said, okay, were you like on the bus? She said, yeah, I was on the bus. I was just looking out the window and I thought I'd message you. And I said, okay, did you have your AirPods in? She said, yeah, I was listening to a podcast. I said, okay, so you were traveling to college, listening to a podcast, looking out the window, thinking about me and our lesson and what we were going to do, and you messaged me. So how many things have you just done? And she went, oh, yeah. And I went, so maybe you can multitask then, can't you? And she went, oh, well, I just do that though, don't I? I said, okay, how many years experience have you had at just being able to do two things at once? I said, are you able to text somebody and say hello to your mum in the kitchen? Oh, yeah, I can do that. There you go then, so you can multitask. So, you know, being able to highlight to them that they've already actually got a lot of the skills that we're going to need when we learn to drive a car. They just need to transfer it.
I see that a lot with my learners, and it is like, how am I supposed to do all of this? And that's where skills makes things so much easier as an instructor to break it down. And I think that's where the risk sharing comes into it, they don't need to
Absolutely.
be looking for their gap. They don't need to be checking. They need to be aware, I guess, that they should be doing it. But if the discussion has happened that I'm going to do this and you're just going to worry about making the car go from here to there, that's all you need to do. And then they're not multitasking. And once they get that kind of down as muscle memory, it's like, right, let's add another layer. Let's add another
That's
layer.
it.
And then everything's so much easier and I think safer for us as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it took me a while to get to that because it wasn't really taught that way when I was going through my training. So it was still more based on subjects and topics. And then you get in the
So,
car and it's like, right, let's do
yeah,
lesson one, left turns.
that's it.
Why can't you get left turns? Well, there's a few skills that are missing first.
So now that you know that as an ADI now, you know that learning skills first are better. How great would it be as a PDI if they've got that information first? If we can try and get to them first and help them and say, look, try it this way. I promise it's going to be easier. How many more PDIs are going to have a better journey and just a more positive all-round experience? They're not going to come into it and qualify and be like, well, now what? I'm working with an ADI at the minute who hasn't had his letter for a standards check yet, but he knows it's coming. He's had a few fails and he's started to think, oh, well, I don't want to get to the point where I'm panicking. And there's a lot of stuff that we've looked at, and he's like, yeah, but I've never been told that. I've never been told that. It's never been explained in that way, or I've never been shown that, or I've never been allowed to try it that way. And I think sometimes you think you have to do it a certain way, you have to do it subjects, you have to do it like this, but yeah, definitely not. There's a lot of, I'm quite a black and white person. It's either black or it's white. And that's not this job at all. There's so much grey area in this job where we actually get to have fun and experiment and do the client-centered stuff, which I think is great.
It is. And I've got a question. We can maybe discuss this, and I don't know where it's going to go, but we've
Okay.
discussed the skills that are needed to drive a car. So we're
Mhm.
teaching our students skills. What do you think are the skills that we need as a driving instructor or as a PDI? What skills should we be working on?
So I feel like there are quite a few main instructor skills that you need to have. I'm not going to list them all right now, but a couple of them that we can highlight. Your first one has to be recognizing what your pupil is doing, when they're doing it, how they're doing it, and why they're doing it. If you're not watching your pupil enough, if you're just staring out the window, or if you're busy driving the car from the passenger side and not remembering your pupil is there, you're going to miss so much. Have you ever been in the car with your partner or a friend and you're at a junction and they're looking left and right, but you're also looking left and right because you're a driver and you're looking to make sure it's safe? I mean, that's great. We need to know it's safe. But whilst we're doing that, we're not checking that our pupil has checked that they've looked left and right. So little skills like that, making sure that we're watching our pupil whilst still managing that risk and checking it is safe to go left and right. Your ability to watch your pupil is huge. There's loads of different ways that we need to explore that. And I think one of the other main instructor skills that you need to have is your ability to get information from your pupil. I think as a PDI, we think that we have to say everything. I need to say this so that the examiner knows that I know it. And actually, sometimes we need to shut up. Sometimes we need to ask a question and get the information from our pupil and give them the confidence to be able to give you that information. And that can be tricky, a little bit like what you were saying earlier about the coaching thing. That's kind of some coaching skills. But you've got to be able to do that. You can't just sit in a car and say, right, this is how you do it. Come on, swap now, you do it. It just doesn't work like that anymore.
So we've got watching the student as one of the skills. So helping your pupil feedback on their performance. So a lot of that, I guess, comes from the questions that we need to ask as well.
That's it. definitely. And again, as a PDI, there are a lot of times when you're hurtling towards a hazard and you're thinking, what's the right question? What am I meant to be asking right now? What does the examiner want to hear me say right now? And actually, maybe you just need to say, stop the car. Maybe you just need to control it. There are a lot of different types of questions that we ask. And when you're training, I remember doing this with my husband and my kids. I remember writing down loads of different examples of questions, and I put them on the fridge. And, instead of just asking my teenager, he wasn't a teenager at the time. Instead of asking him, why haven't you cleaned your room? I'd change my question a little bit. I'd be a bit more of a coach to him, and I'd say, Liam, tell me why you think you've not cleaned your room today. And he'd look at me and he'd be like, Mum, why are you speaking to me like that? But, I would just try it out on him. And I guess that's the beauty of being a trainee. You can, as long as you know what it is you're meant to be doing, you can try it out everywhere. So, yeah.
I don't think that just comes from being a trainee either. I try different things on my lessons. For that reason, it's exploring. Because the way you ask a question, the answer you're going to get back could be, you could ask the same question worded two different ways and you're going to get two different answers. And the example then, why haven't you cleaned your room? That's very much putting the blame onto someone, like, why haven't you done this?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
And that's then going to get them defensive and looking for excuses. If we do the same with our student in the car, why didn't you put your clutch down? They're going to be looking for a reason why they didn't, instead of more of a prompting question or guidance. So they're not defensive and they're not feeling like they're at fault for it.
Yeah, we want to ask a question that maybe we don't know the answer to. Bit of an open question, an explorative question. Why do you think you didn't put the clutch down there? Because the amount of reasons there could be, I didn't know I had to. I forgot. I was thinking about what I'm going to have for my tea. I've just had an argument with my girlfriend, so I'm a bit mad about that. I'm struggling for money at the minute. My job's not going very well. I've got a college essay due next week and I'm worried about that. There are so many reasons of why that pupil at that time might not have put the clutch down. And it might actually be nothing to do with driving at all. But if we don't find out what that reason is, we're never going to actually get to the bottom of it. We need to be asking some deeper questions with our pupils, not so that we sound like we're bullying them or judging them and accusing them. Why didn't you put your clutch down? That's not going to get anyone anywhere, is it?
It's difficult, I think, when you first start, because it seems easier to assume you know why something hasn't happened. I found it loads of times when I ask a question, and it's not normally the first or the second question where you get to the root of the problem. It's normally a few questions and you're like, we've got it now. We've got something to work on for you as an individual to progress in this skill or this topic or whatever it is we're working on. Because it's so quick to be like, oh, we went a bit quick there. And it's just easy to assume you didn't brake enough.
Absolutely.
But
yeah.
they could have been going quicker because, well, what I'm seeing a lot more now at the minute is I don't like this roundabout. So I'm just going to go as quick as I can and get across it. And I now have an idea of what people are doing. And the more you build up that experience, it does become a little bit easier to get the right questions at the right time. But I think earlier on, it was like, you went too fast there. My assumption is you've not used enough brake. Let's go and practice using more brake. And it doesn't really change, because the next time we come, or a couple of lessons later, we're back to doing the same thing, because we've assumed we know the answer, and generally we don't.
You've got to explore it, haven't you? You went quick there, didn't you? Well, my dad always goes quick here. My dad says I can do it like that. I get that one a lot, This roundabout's all right because my dad does it like this and he straight lines it, so I know I can do it in third, doing 30. And you're thinking, no, you can't. Slow down. But yeah, exactly. We can't even, not that we can't even, but ask, even just saying you went too quick there, didn't you? We could always just reframe that question as well. Instead of us assuming you went quicker there, didn't you? They haven't really got much choice other than to go, yeah. What we could say is, what did you think about your speed as you approach that roundabout? And then that's a bit more of an open question. It's, we're getting them to the nitty gritty. We want to talk about the speed, but we want to know what they thought about their speed. They might have thought it was all right because that's what dad does every time. We know they need to slow down. We've got that information, but they might have that as well. They might figure out that, oh, actually, dad does it, but that's because dad's been driving 20 years and dad's never crashed, and that's dad. Maybe for me, I'm actually going to slow down a bit. And we're only going to get to that knowledge if we are asking the right questions at the right time.
So we've gone from working out what skills we need as instructors to talking about how we get questions what questions. But I do think that questioning technique and having that understanding is huge. And it does seem to be something that comes up quite a bit on Facebook when I'm scrolling through. I'm doing this lesson on my part 3. What are some questions I can ask for my student? Or what questions will the examiner want to see? And I'll rarely comment on them because I think it's such a difficult thing to comment on without seeing the lesson, understanding the pupil, understanding the PDI or ADI and that relationship. And I found the level of questions I ask will change depending on the level of student as well.
Absolutely.
So it is, I think that's a very big subject and probably one where you need to spend a lot of time as a PDI understanding how you can get the best out of your students by using the questions.
There's so many factors you have to take into account. You mentioned you'd change your questioning depending on the pupil. You might also change your questioning depending on how you're feeling. You might change your questioning on the day because the weather's bad. You might need to be a bit more risk focused on such and such day, or your questioning might change because your pupils got in and you can tell they're in a bad mood, and they start, you become agony aunt and they start spilling their guts, and your questions then might be a little bit more, okay, so how can we get you feeling better today? Today's lesson might not be so much about you need to do this driving thing. Maybe it is, we now know that emotions can affect your driving. How can we get you driving feeling better, for example? And going back to, the questions, and for PDIs not knowing what question, that kind of links to what I said earlier about what I want to help people with. If we can get PDIs sitting in ADIs cars more, getting them watching ADIs use the correct questioning techniques, how much better would it be? We'd see a lot less Facebook posts that are saying, what question am I meant to use? Because they'll have had that experience already.
That's massively important, the observing lessons. I've taken people out to watch me teaching, and it is a bit concerning. And I was in the same boat as well, that I was teaching lessons and I'd not really seen any lessons being delivered. And I know from people sitting in my car that they're on a PDI license, and that's the first lesson that they've observed.
Yeah.
And it's
like
crazy. We're doing the job, but they've not seen how it should be done. They might have done role play and seen a pretend lesson, great for some things, but it's, I guess, the conversation and rapport that you're not going to see in role play that you need to see watching live lessons. And I learned so much doing that. I think I learned more there than I did. I learned more observing than I did anything else when I eventually got out to watch a PDI, because I worked with a PDI at the time, watched him teach, he watched me teach. Neither of us were qualified at the time. But that was our biggest kind of learning curve in preparation for our part 3s.
It's a bit like, if you got a job in a restaurant, you would be asked to go in for a trial shift where you would follow somebody else that's working on the bar, for example, and you would watch how they would pour the drinks and you would watch how they would take payment. If you got an office job, sometimes you go in for the day before and you shadow somebody and you sit near them on their desk and you watch how they put an invoice through or whatever. on the job training, this kind of thing, it's a bit like, we're going to simulate your training for 40 hours by using role play, which there's benefits to role play. But we're going to simulate your training. We're going to simulate what might happen. And then we're going to give you this license and off you go. That's it. Off you go. And why aren't we doing more for our PDIs? As ADIs, I think we've all got a bit of a responsibility. If we are contacted by a PDI, if we know of a local PDI that's struggling, why not invite them in a lesson? It's not going to hurt you. Just let them sit in the back. If anything, it's a great teaching moment for your pupil. Say to your pupil, when you've passed, you're going to pick your mates up and you're going to go to the Starbucks drive-through. Well, we've got such and such in the back today. They're going to be your mate today. We're going to have a little drive and we're going to see how the car feels different, having someone in the back. So not only can it benefit the PDI, it can benefit your pupil, which then in turn benefits you because they're going to be like, wow, this instructor cares about me. They're not just going to get me to pass my test. They want to make sure I don't go and kill myself afterwards. There's a lot of benefits to it. Absolutely.
I think there's also benefit not just for the pupil and the PDI, but for me as an ADI. I mean, I think we've got to be careful potentially who we're observing and the level of ADI that is being observed. But for me, I've had PDIs watching. I had someone sat in the back who was thinking of becoming a driving instructor. I've had a couple do that actually. But some of the questions that they ask and some of the things where it's like, why did you do this and why didn't you do that? Which has helped me either understand why I'm doing something or potentially make me look at what I'm doing and how I can develop it. So I'm also learning based on the questions that they're asking me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think no matter who we are, we can always learn. I am literally a self-confessed geek. I love learning. My teenager, my 14-year-old, at his parents' evening, every department had like these tasks. So in English, there was this Harry Potter task where you go in and you had to find the good vowels and the good verbs and the good adjectives and stuff. Oh my God, I was in there for about half an hour. I loved this task. And he's literally like, Mum, come on. And I'm like, no, I'm going to stay here. And then we went to the Spanish class and I was doing this Spanish quiz. Never spoke Spanish in my life. I love learning and I still learn from other trainers. I love going on courses and speaking to people. You learn from your pupils as well. Some of the stuff they come out with and you think, oh, I've not heard that yet. I need to now adapt what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do or what we're going to do today because I've never heard them say that. And I think we can always learn. We can always better ourselves. I know some people get in the mindset of, well, I've always done it this way and it's not gone me, but I've not gone wrong since. Fair enough. There must be some truth in that. Absolutely. But why not try and better yourself? Why wouldn't anybody want to better themselves? That's just my opinion though.
I'm very similar. There's always something to learn. And as an instructor, I'm always learning, like you say, the answers that you get, the situations you find yourself in with learners, it's like, oh, that's new. And it's great. That's why I enjoy it. And it just keeps me developing and looking at myself as well and how I can deliver a better product for my learners is
Absolutely.
something that's helped me. So there is, we can learn, we can develop, and we can get it from everyone, PDIs, ADIs, people that aren't in the industry, our pupils. There's
I think
a lot
sometimes
to
as well, as an instructor, sometimes it can be useful to learn a new skill yourself. So learn a new language or learn how to juggle or learn how to spin plates or learn how to, I don't know, whatever. Because then you kind of put yourself in the shoes of the pupil a little bit. You're learning this new skill and you go into, I don't know, let's say, for example, you're learning martial arts or something and you go to your first class and everyone's there with their black belts or whatever, and you're there just in your joggers and your t-shirt and you feel like the newbie and you feel like you don't know what you're doing. But then you get stuck in and you start experiencing stuff. And whatever it is that you learn, a new skill, you can kind of empathize with your pupil. You can understand how they must be feeling when they're learning the new skill of learning how to drive. I think we can always all better ourselves. Although I'm not going to learn martial arts anytime soon, I don't think.
It's good fun. I'd highly recommend it. But it's a good place to bring it to, that we can empathize with our learners. You can empathize with the PDIs. So what kind of training, courses, what are you going to be offering for people that are watching and need help?
So the first thing I'm going to be offering is just me. And what I mean by that is, again, when I was training, I didn't feel like I had somebody. I did later on in my training, but for the majority of it, I didn't feel like I had somebody that I could message at any time of day with a question or with a query or with a worry or with a even something good, just anything. Obviously, I've got children, I'm working as well, but I'll always get back to people. And sometimes I felt like I was pestering or like I was a bit of a nuisance for asking trainers help and things like that. If somebody's got a question for me, I'll always get back to them when I can. So, my Facebook is open. Anybody can add me, anybody can message me. That's there. I've got a group opening up, Empathetic Instructor Training group, that I'm hoping can be a safe place for people to not only access me, but access some other great people, yourself included, who can be there to offer advice and offer help in a non-judgmental way, a safe place for people to, rant, scream, shout, cry if they're upset, but also, celebrating success and help others have a good journey qualifying. So we've got that for Facebook, and then we've got me as well. I've got some sessions lined up with some experts in our industry, some Zoom sessions that I'll be offering. Each one will have a slightly different theme tailored to the expert. And then I'm also going to do some Zoom sessions of my own. I've got lots of ideas of videos and Zooms that I remember I would have benefited from. For example, what do you do as a PDI when your pupil says, I don't know? What do you say then? And actually, there's quite a lot of I don't knows we get in a lesson. I'm really wanting to talk to people about what you can do in that scenario. And then on top of that, I'm also going to be offering some structured courses and workshops. I've got a few already lined up. The first one's next week, where people can come on and we'll do a structured Zoom session on a specific topic or a specific skill, not a subject. And the idea of that is to hopefully help empower PDIs and ADIs who might want to freshen up their knowledge on these skills so that they can take them into their lessons and they can start implementing them straight away as well.
So where can people find those courses?
So you can visit beckyseaton.co.uk. On there, you'll be able to see where they all are. You can also visit pdiadi.com and you can find me on there as well. Alternatively, you can just message me on Facebook and I can send you the link. I'm not going to spam everyone all the time, but they're there for people. I've also got the Empathetic Instructor Training page on Facebook. So as well as the group, which is going to be a private group, it's not going to be for spammers and everything. It's going to be just for people that want to be in that safe space. We've got the Empathetic Instructor Training page where I'll advertise stuff on and people can contact me through there or via my personal page, whatever works.
Nice. And those courses, so the specific ones, are they one-to-one courses or is it all group, or how's that going to work for people?
So initially I've got them as group courses. The idea being is because sometimes, again, as a PDI, if you know that you're going to be in a situation one-on-one, you can feel a little bit nervous. It's a little bit like the bystander effect, you know, if there's more than one of you, you don't have to be the one that speaks all the time, and you can, and that's fine. I understand that. I think sometimes having a small intimate group of people where you can say your name and you can say where you're at your journey and maybe what you want to get out of the course could make you feel a little bit easier, and not as one-on-one kind of thing. You can find those courses on pdiadi.com /trainer/Becky Seaton. Again, or just message me. The other option is, if you prefer a more one-on-one setting, you can find all of those on beckyseaton.co.uk.
Cool. We will make sure that we get those in the description, and we'll also put your Facebook groups, pages, and your Facebook as well, so people can reach out to you directly if that's okay. But do you have any other messages that you'd like to share with people?
Oh, that's a good question. I've got a lot. I've got a lot in my head that I want to share with people. I'll just leave you with a couple of things. I think the first thing is, if you are on the journey at the minute and you are having a bit of a crappy time, I promise you it will get better. I promise you we can help. Whether that is me, whether you think, yeah, she sounds all right, I'll get in touch with her for some training, or whether it's another trainer that you feel valued from, you feel like you can trust. Doesn't matter where you get it from. Let's just give you guys the correct information and help you have a good time doing this, because it doesn't have to be a bad time. It doesn't. And I guess the last thing is if you have a part 3 test coming up imminently, maybe you're watching this the night before your part 3 test, my best advice for you is to forget the examiners there. Introduce them to your pupil and just forget that they exist. Focus on your pupil and their needs at the time.
Some great messages there, and hopefully anyone watching or listening gets some benefit from those messages and everything that you've shared tonight. It's been a pleasure talking to you again. Thank you for your time tonight and chatting.
Always a pleasure, Josh. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you.